guys, welcome back to the Op Man podcast. I'm the Op Man, Peter, and today we're going to talk about break even analysis. So, what is break even analysis? Really, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an analysis of when you're going to break even as a company. Now, this isn't something that you want to just do when you're in the middle of running your business. This is kind of like a forecasting tool that's used by operations managers, also internal management accountants, lots of people involved in forecasting to determine what point you're going to start making a profit, when you're going to stop making a loss. So there's really two components to this, or two really important numbers to look at. It's your break-even units. So how many, for example, pizzas do I need to sell to cover my costs? And then also your break-even dollars. So how much money will I be at when I start making a profit or when I stop making a loss? So of course, everybody wants to run a business to make a profit. No one wants to run a business to just be like, oh goodness, I made $0. I'm good. No, but it's an important starting point. That's really important when you go into forecasting and seeing what's the point where I can start achieving sustainable growth, sustainable profitability, and how do I know that I'm on the right direction to achieving that goal. So let's get into it. I got some graphs I'm going to show you guys. We'll go through an example, and we'll also look at some practical applications of how this is used in other areas like locational break even, which is a little bit different, but it's actually, I promise, it's really exciting. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about break even analysis. So my name is Pete. I love pizza, and so a perfect place for our theoretical example is Pete's Pizza. Now, this is a real place somewhere in Wilmington, Delaware, apparently, but Pete's Pizza from Delaware, you're welcome for the free advertising on that previous slide there. So let's get into it. We need to talk about some assumptions just for the basic explanation of the break-even model. So the fixed cost of rent, it's going to be $2,000 per month. The variable cost will be $2 per pizza, and the selling price will be $6. So just to explain the cost a little bit more, the rent is a fixed cost because it doesn't matter how many pizzas I sell, that rent expense is still going to be there. But the variable cost, hence variable, will change depending on how many pizzas I make. So if I make 1,000 pizzas, then it's $2,000. If I don't make any pizzas, I don't have any variable costs under this assumption. So again, just to recap, $2,000 fixed costs, $2 of variable costs, and $6 selling price per pizza. So this is what we'll refer to as the base case. So we've laid out our assumptions. The variable cost, the fixed cost, and the selling price have all been explained under certain assumptions. So the break-even units highlighted there in the table is 500. So what does that mean? The break-even units of 500 are the number of units that we're going to have to sell to reach the point where our total costs of 3,000 equal our total revenue of 3,000. And so if you look at the graph, the break-even point has been indicated there in red. So at that point, anything below in terms of sales units, anything below expressed in terms of dollars, below that point is going to result in a loss. But anything above, it's going to mean our revenues exceed our total costs and we're going to be profitable. So what makes break-even analysis such a useful tool for operations managers is the ability to change some of the assumptions based on what they anticipate might happen and see how that impacts our break-even point. So Pete's Pizza is in Toronto. We're in Canada. Rent prices are always going up. Everybody knows that. So unfortunately, our rent has increased to $2,400 per month. And as we can see here, it's impacted our break-even point pretty significantly. So now we actually have to sell 600 pizzas to make our revenue meet our total costs at $3,600. And so on the graph, visually you can see that the break-even point, the point at which the total costs meets the total revenue, that's actually higher. So again, an increase to the fixed cost is going to make the break-even point go up, and that's not necessarily, that's not particularly a good thing. But the reverse is also true. So say somehow, some way, our rent was to decrease here in Toronto, then our break-even point would be lower. So being able to manipulate some of the assumptions, this one in terms of fixed costs, is actually really important and really useful for operations managers. So just for one final spin on changing some of the assumptions, my fixed costs, my rent, it's still $2,000, so back to the base case. But now my variable cost has increased to $4. My suppliers are charging me an arm and a leg for the ingredients that goes into my pizzas. So now my break-even units is 1,000. I need to sell 1,000 pizzas, and I need to make $6,000 of revenue just to break even, just to hit my costs. So you can see on the graph there, the break-even point is much higher, the point at which the revenue and cost curve intersect. So again, changing some of these assumptions, especially when it comes to variable costs, that can really have a strong, profound effect on the break-even point when you're doing this analysis. Now, it's worth briefly mentioning that you don't necessarily have to graph out everything. There's simple formulas that can be used to calculate your break-even revenue and break-even units. So for the break-even revenue, applying it to the base case we just went through, you get your $2,000 fixed cost and rent, and divide that by your contribution margin ratio. Now that's kind of a management accounting term. All that really is your selling price minus your variable costs, again, then divided by your selling price. And we see that we get the same result. We get the $3,000. And then on the other side, the break-even units, again, fixed cost divided by your selling price minus your variable costs, you end up with 500 units. So in practice, this is much easier than going to the effort of graphing out everything, especially when the company is much bigger, many more revenues, many more costs. In our assumptions, we only had one different type of each cost and one selling price. So these formulas are very, very useful to quickly calculating your break-even revenue and break-even units. I've looked at break-even analysis with my fictional pizza restaurant, and now we can look at it in practice when it comes to Starbucks. So unlike Pete's Pizza, which just had one different type of each cost and one selling price, one product, Starbucks has a lot of data to work with. So they'll look at things like demographics, the amount of foot traffic that they'll get at locations. They'll look at things like competition within the area, different things like that they can incorporate into their break-even analysis with their data, and I'm sure the tools they have to analyze that data and help them make a good decision. But a very basic sort of example they might encounter is if they're trying to decide between opening a coffee shop at like a high-end mall versus a place on like the outskirts of town. The high-end mall will have like very high fixed cost, high rent, but also probably more foot traffic than that place on the outskirts of town, which will have lower rent but definitely lower foot traffic. So just these types of considerations are important, not just how much will the variable cost be and this and that. Um, you have to kind of take these qualitative factors into play, and then that can help you make the best decision. And the more data you have that you can incorporate into that, of course, the better decision you'll make in the end. So Starbucks is actually really well known for this. I've put a link at the end of the video to show you where you can learn more about this. But it's definitely a really cool example and shows how they use data in this very technique to make good decisions. So we've talked a lot about companies using break-even analysis, both real companies and fake companies, but it's actually a tool that can be used in everyday life. So something that I like to do, I like to go to the gym. And so I've been to a gym before where you can pay every time you go, like a smaller amount, or you can buy a monthly membership. Let's say the monthly membership is 50 bucks and you pay $5 every time you go. In a month, if I'm going to go more than 10 times, then I'm better off getting the membership, even though it's more expensive, because I know it's going to cost more through the successive use of the facility if I'm paying every time that I go. Another example would be like if I'm going to get a new laundry machine and it costs like, I don't know, $1,000, and I'm paying $10 every time I do my laundry at the laundromat. Eventually, it's going to pay off if I buy the machine, because I would be saving money through successive use of the machine over, let's say, I guess 100 times. So if I'm going to use the machine like the 101, 102, 103rd time, I've now saved money by buying the machine instead of continuously paying money every time I do my laundry. So decisions like that, while they may seem small, like this is a tool that can be used to really help make small decisions in everyday life that can actually add up to savings over time. Thinking like an accountant, thinking like there's a reason why people use these techniques at big companies, and if it's working for them, why can't it work for us, right? So yeah, I thought it was a cool couple of examples there to demonstrate how this can be used in everyday life. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in today to the Op Man podcast, where we talked about break even analysis. So, if you took away anything from today, it's that you don't have to be the CEO of Starbucks, you don't have to be a business owner. Break even analysis is the best way to make any sort of decision that involves a fixed and a variable component. And I guarantee if you use this technique in your own life, it'll help you be your own best operations manager of your own life when it comes to your own finances and decision making. So, once again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week.